On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC 302 co-main event, which features Sean Strickland taking on Paulo Costa. This is a 5-round fight. And my name is James Lynch. If you've never watched a show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles. Then I'm going to give you my prediction for this fight at the end. Some of this stuff may have relevance, it may not. I would love to get your prediction in the comments. We can discuss this fight. It's really going to be an interesting one in the middleweight division, as we always do. Let's do a quick tail of the tape between these two. You can see Sean Strickland, 28-6 record, 14-3 for Paulo Costa. So Strickland with a lot more experience. 33 years old. They're both 33, actually. Interesting enough. They're both 6'1", and Strickland's going to have about a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. So really interesting one. Strickland currently ranked number 1 in the division. Paulo Costa ranked number 7. Some people feel like this fight doesn't make a ton of sense because of the rankings and all that, but who else is Strickland going to fight? You got Chimaev, you got Whitaker fighting each other. Looks like Duplessis is fighting Adesanya. So this is what we get, and I don't mind it. I think it's a fight that keeps both guys busy, and despite Costa losing his last fight, I actually thought he looked pretty good against Robert Whitaker. So let's get into the former middleweight champion, Sean Strickland, and talk a little bit about him and what he brings to the table here. So you can see there, Sean Strickland, I mentioned it, ranked number 1 middleweight. He is 33 years old. He will have a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's a BJJ brown belt, trains out of Extreme Couture. He's the one-time UFC middleweight champion. He's got fight of the night 1 time against Dricus Du Plessis. He's got performance of the night 3 times against Brendan Allen, Abus Magomedov, and Israel Adesanya. He's got the second lowest bottom position percentage in UFC middleweight division history at 0.51. He's got the 5th most significant strikes landed in UFC middleweight division history at 982. And he's got a bunch of other stuff too that we could go through, but those are just some of the accolades that he has. Strickland did not have an amateur debut, went straight to the pros in March of 2008. He is, what do we got here? What am I looking at? Made his UFC debut in March of 2014, where he fought Bubba McDaniel. And made his MMA debut, like I said, in March of 2008. No amateur debut. Strickland is 15-6 in the UFC. Some notable wins include, and he's got 5 stoppage victories. Some notable wins include Brendan Allen, Uriah Hall, Jack Hermanson, Nasruddin Imavov, and Israel Adesanya. Some notable losses include, and these are mostly at welterweight. You've got losses to Santiago Ponzinibbio, Kamaru Usman, Zaleski. Also lost to Alex Pereira at middleweight, Jared Cannonier, and Dricus Du Plessis as well. He's had a few layoffs in his career, obviously going from Luke Barnett to who is it here? Yeah, Luke Barnett to Ponzinibbio. There's 267-day layoff. Going from Tom Breeze to Kamaru Usman, there was a 308-day layoff. And then obviously the big one there, Nordine Taleb to Jack Marshman, 735 days off. Of course, that's when he had the motorcycle accident. And that was sort of the end of his career at welterweight, fighting at middleweight since then. We could go through a bunch of injuries. We're going to skip those today. Let's talk about some of the close fights that Strickland's had. He's had a few ones early in his career, but let's stick with the ones more recently. The Jared Cannonier fight, if you go back and look at the scorecards on that one, that was UFC on ESPN Plus back in December of 2022. 13 media members scored the fight for Cannonier, 7 scored it for Strickland. And then most recently, his last fight, bit of a controversial one there, but I mean, I thought Du Plessis won. It was very close though. The media agrees because if you look at the scorecards for that, that's UFC 297 back in January of this year. 13 media members scored the fight for DDP. 10 media members scoring it for Strickland. So again, razor close fight in Toronto, and Strickland drops the title to Du Plessis. As far as Strickland's stats, if you look at it here, he has got a significant strikes landed per minute, 5.91. His striking accuracy is at 41%. He's got a striking defense of 62%, so he doesn't get hit that much. That's actually one of the higher ones there. His takedown accuracy is at 64%. His takedown defense is at 77%, so a lot of guys are not able to take him down, although I doubt we'll see that in this fight. I think this is going to end up being on the feet. But yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know about Sean Strickland. One of the most interesting characters in the sport, but also one of the best fighters. If you look at his resume and who he's lost to and who he's fought, Strickland has carved out quite the career for himself at middleweight. But let's get to his opponent now, the number 7th ranked middleweight, Paulo Costa, the Eraser. You can see their 14-3 record. Costa, like I mentioned, also 33 years old. He's 6'1" with a 72-inch reach. He's a BJJ black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He trains at a Fight Ready sometimes, but also trains in Brazil. He's got performance of the night 2 times against Gareth McClellan and Uriah Hall. He's got fight of the night 2 times against Yoel Romero and Luke Rockhold. He's got the 4th most significant strikes landed per minute in UFC middleweight division history at 6.09. Also, Costa did not have an amateur debut, just like Sean Strickland. Went straight to the pros in February of 2012. Made his UFC debut in March of 2017. He is 6-3 in the UFC UFC. He's got 4 finishes. Some notable wins included former welterweight champion Johnny Hendricks, Yoel Romero, and Luke Rockhold, the former middleweight champion. Some losses include Israel Adesanya. Adesanya is still the only fighter to finish him in the UFC. Marvin Vettori lost to him in that weird fight that ended up being at 205 pounds. And then obviously Robert Whittaker in his last fight, which was close. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's talk about 2 close fights that Strickland has had in his career. The Romero one, if you go and look at that, that was UFC 241 in August of 2019. 11 media members scoring the fight for Costa, 9 scoring it for Romero. So again, very close fight there. And then his last fight against Robert Whittaker was kind of close, only for the simple fact that Costa almost finished Whittaker in the first round, right? That was very close. That could have been like a 10-8. But then Whittaker edging it out the rest of the fight. You look at the media scorecards for that. That was just back in February. 27 media members scored the fight for Whittaker, just 2 scoring it for Paulo Costa. So again, I think most people felt like Costa did not deserve to get the nod on that card. But I will say that was a fight that, again, because he looked so good in that first round of Whittaker, I think that's why the odds on this fight are a little bit closer, which we'll get to in a little bit. I think if Costa had not fought Whittaker and had that performance despite a loss, I think he'd be a bigger underdog in this spot, because we just haven't, he hasn't fought that much. So he's only got 17 fights. There's a lot of gaps in here, right? Like you look at, early on in his career, he fought 3 times a year in 2017, fought a couple times in 2018, then it was 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And then didn't fight at all in 2023, and then didn't fight again until 2024. So a number of layoffs there. We might as well go through those there right now. The most recent ones, going from Adesanya to Vettori, there's a 392. Oh, first, let's go back to Yoel Romero. That was a big one. Going from Yoel Romero to Israel Adesanya was a 430-day layoff. Going from Israel Adesanya to Vettori was a 392-day layoff. Vettori to Rockhold, 301 days. Rockhold to Whittaker, 546 days, and then going from Whittaker to Strickland, just 105 days. So this is one of the shortest turnarounds he's had in his UFC career. Again, fighting in February. Let's look at his stats. Again, very impressive here. 6.20 strikes landed per minute, so this guy does hit a lot, but again, he's fighting a very good defensive fighter. Striking accuracy is at 58%, striking defense is at 47%, so he does get hit a little bit. Takedown accuracy, like Strickland's, very high at 75%. His takedown defense is at 80%, and his takedown average is 0.45. If you look at the odds right now, you do have Strickland as about a minus 230 favorite around here. Costa almost plus 200 around there, about plus 190 to plus 150 in the range. And on Tapology, this is kind of crazy. I mean, I get it, but it's something a bit interesting I wanted to point out here. If you look on the fan voting on Tapology, 85% of people picking Strickland, only 15% picking Costa. So that does not look like what the odds are saying. This is actually a higher percentage, or close to as high a percentage as Islam to Dustin Poirier, just to give you an idea. So just goes to show how people are very high on Strickland from the fans' perspective going in this fight. So who's going to win this fight? Again, Strickland is the favorite. Do I think Costa will knock him out? No, I do not. And for that reason, I'm taking Sean Strickland in this fight. I know this is kind of an obvious pick, but I'm going to be taking Sean Strickland by decision. So a couple of reasons why I like Strickland by decision as opposed to stoppage. 46% of Strickland's wins are by decision. He doesn't finish a lot. He doesn't have a lot of like knockout power. He's more like a TKO volume guy when it comes to finishing his opponents. He's not the type of guy to finish Costa. The only way I could see Strickland finishing this fight is if it's later and Costa gets tired in those later rounds. But again, Vettori wasn't able to finish him in the only 5-round fight that Costa's had in the UFC. Adesanya was able to finish him. So we'll see. But Adesanya, I would argue, has more power than Strickland. If you look at Costa's losses, doesn't get finished that much, right? 67% of his losses are by decision. But granted, that's just 2 losses. So something to kind of keep in mind there. I really don't think Costa will knock out Sean Strickland. It's possible. But, I mean, the last time Costa had a knockout win was, like, he didn't knock out Rockhold. Granted, that was at elevation. Was Uriah Hall back in 2018. That's the last stoppage win he has. He's not very, like, he has power, but, I think a lot of the guys he's fighting are high level and they're not easy to finish. I would put Strickland in that category. I remember when Sean Strickland got knocked out by Alex Pereira, and everyone's like, oh, he has a bad chin. Like, all these guys are going to knock him out. I know a lot of people are saying Adesanya was going to knock him out. It didn't happen. He's actually very good defensively. And I think for that reason, I don't think Costa is going to be able to do what he did against Whittaker in that first round. I think Strickland's going to be too good. On the flip side, Strickland's fought guys with knockout power as of late, right? Duplessis got knockout power. Not to the extent of Costa, but he's finished guys. Adesanya's got knockout power. Abus Magomedov has made a career on finishing guys in the first round. Strickland survived that. Imovov's got some power. Cannonier's got power, right? So again, we've seen Strickland fight a lot of power punchers, not get finished. The only one being Pereira, at least recently, that's finished him. And some of those losses that he's had at welterweight, a lot of that I think had to do with the weight cut. I think Sean Strickland's in the right weight class. The other reason I like Strickland here is the 5-round experience. We know this guy's got cardio. He can go the distance. We've seen in a number of occasions of him hitting the judges' scorecard. So there we go. And let's call it like it is. The only reason Costa's getting this fight is because of lack of options. They could have, most likely they should have done Whitaker and Strickland. I think that made more sense, but they needed Chimaev to fight someone. Could have also done Chimaev and Strickland. Costa's ranked number 7, Strickland's ranked number 1. You don't see that matchmaking happen too often, but I think they're looking at it from the personality perspective of Strickland and Costa would definitely, have like an interesting build up to the fight. And they're also, on the Costa side anyways, Costa's a bit of an exciting fighter. Strickland not so much, but Strickland's exciting just in terms of how he promotes his fights. So I think they just took two big personalities, put them together and hope for the best there. So that's why this fight's happening. But I think in general, you can make an argument Sean Strickland should still be the champion right now. I think he's, again, in his prime right now, performing at a high level. And we just have more evidence of Strickland looking better. Like, you want to use a little MMA math here. Strickland beat Adesanya. Adesanya finished Costa. Now, obviously, they're different fighters since then, but I would argue that Strickland's very hard to take out. And I don't think Costa will be the guy to do it. So again, my official pick for this fight is going to be Sean Strickland by decision. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking in this fight? How do you think this fight unfolds? How do you see it going down? I think we all agree that the 5 rounds favors Strickland. Can Costa find another gear in that later round and maybe finish Strickland? We'll see, but I think it's either Costa finish or Strickland decision. I don't think Strickland will finish him, and like I said, even if he does, I think it's going to be later in the fight. I don't think it's going to be anything early there. So let me know your prediction in the comments. If there's any other fights you want me to preview that are coming up, let me know. I'm certainly open to suggestion, but mainly looking at title fights and sort of big names that are coming up here pretty soon. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.